President Trump confirmed his intent to impose 25% tariffs starting tomorrow on Mexican and Canadian goods.
Now, he previously postponed the tax hike against America's biggest trading partners. There are fears the tariffs could have a negative impact on the U.S. economy.
But very importantly, tomorrow tariffs 25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico.
Something unexpected rippled through global politics this week, and it did not come from Washington. At Davos, Canada floated a bold rethink of how middle powers might line up, a move many brushed off as talk with no teeth. Then Mexico stepped forward fast and in public, backing the idea without hesitation. That single decision sent tension humming across North America. Markets had assumed Mexico would keep its focus locked on the United States. Analysts said pragmatism would win. Commentators predicted polite silence. None of that happened. Why did Mexico move so quickly, and why now? Who stands to gain, who takes the hit, and how does this shift redraw the balance ahead? Let's break it all down. Mexico City woke up on January 22nd with no expectation of making international headlines, yet inside the National Palace press room, a quiet moment set off a chain reaction across North America. President Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo stood at the podium during her regular morning conference when a journalist raised a question about Davos. She had every reason to sidestep it. She chose not to. Instead, she openly praised Mark Carney's speech, calling it very good and aligned with the moment the world is living through. In diplomatic language, that was not a casual remark. It signaled a deliberate message that Mexico's future calculations no longer rest on automatic dependence. What followed revealed far more than agreement with a speech. It exposed a structural shift already underway. 2 days earlier, on January 20th, the atmosphere at the World Economic Forum had followed a familiar rhythm. Global leaders delivered polished remarks designed to offend no one and commit to little. When Mark Carney stepped onto the stage, expectations stayed low. Observers anticipated measured language and safe conclusions. Instead, the tone shifted. Carney argued that the so-called rules-based international order had lost its credibility, and that middle power nations faced a stark decision about how to move forward. Competing for favor from dominant powers would only deepen vulnerability. Cooperation among peers offered a different outcome. The speech did not name enemies or issue threats, yet it challenged assumptions that had governed trade and diplomacy for decades. Financial markets largely dismissed the address as rhetorical positioning. Policy analysts in Washington categorized it as Canadian idealism dressed in Davos language. Mexico heard something else entirely. Leaders in Mexico City heard an opening that aligned with pressures they had been navigating for years. The response was fast and unmistakable. Sheinbaum's endorsement came less than 48 hours later and landed during a nationally broadcast press conference. That timing was no accident. It demonstrated readiness rather than hesitation and intent rather than symbolism. The backdrop to this moment matters. Claudia Sheinbaum entered office as Mexico's first woman president, carrying the weight of a deeply imbalanced relationship with the United States. She inherited years defined by policy whiplash, tariff threats, and public insults. Donald Trump's return to the presidency revived memories that never fully faded. Social media posts showing American flags draped over Canadian territory and remarks calling Canada the 51st state were not dismissed in Mexico as theater. They were read as signals of how power was being framed across the continent. Mexico understood that the same lens could easily turn south. Against that backdrop, Carney's message landed differently. It offered a framework built on autonomy, without isolation, and cooperation without submission. For Mexico, the appeal lay in the practicality of it. The country had experienced firsthand how unpredictable trade policies could destabilize long-term planning. NAFTA's dismantling and replacement with an agreement requiring renewal every 6 years ensured permanent uncertainty. Tariffs imposed without warning confirmed that leverage rested overwhelmingly in Washington. Competing for approval under those conditions carried diminishing returns. At the same time, diplomatic groundwork was already being laid. Governor General Mary Simon had concluded a 3-day visit to Mexico City shortly before Sheinbaum's remarks. It marked the first visit by Canada's first Indigenous Governor General to the Mexican capital. Symbolism played a role, yet substance mattered more. The meetings focused on reconciliation, sovereignty, and shared historical experiences navigating powerful neighbors. Federal Deputy Dolores Padierna Luna described the encounter as extraordinary and stressed the need for deeper dialogue and mutual support between the two countries. This was not background noise. It was part of a coordinated shift. Mexico's lawmakers across party lines echoed similar interpretations. Deputy Juan Ignacio Zavala Gutierrez from the Citizens Movement Party characterized Carney's speech as powerful and clear, noting how emerging forces were seeking alliances to manage pressure from hegemonic states like the United States and China. From the Institutional Revolutionary Party, Deputy Ana Isabel González González emphasized concern over preserving the USMCA as the current administration in Washington appeared ambivalent about its continuation. Unity, she argued, was no longer optional. Those concerns were grounded in experience. Both Canada and Mexico remembered the first Trump administration vividly. Arbitrary tariffs disrupted supply chains overnight. Negotiations unfolded under constant threat. Alliances were treated as transactions rather than commitments. The renewal mechanism embedded into the USMCA ensured that uncertainty remained a permanent feature. For both Ottawa and Mexico City, Carney's speech articulated what had been felt but rarely stated publicly. Competing individually for favor was a losing strategy. Coordinated leverage offered a different path. Economic logic reinforced the political argument. Mexican journalist Alex González Ormerod highlighted how complementary the two economies truly are. His example focused on canola, a seemingly narrow commodity that illustrates a broader pattern. Mexico imports canola from the United States. Canada exports canola to China. Both relationships expose each country to policy decisions beyond their control. By redirecting trade between Canada and Mexico, both reduce exposure to external leverage while strengthening regional resilience. This approach is neither ideological nor confrontational. It is substitution grounded in pragmatism. Canada's recent dealings with China provided a model Mexico studied closely. Electric vehicles entered Chinese markets, and in exchange, canola tariffs were lowered. Economic interests were served without sacrificing sovereignty. Mexico recognized a country acting strategically rather than reactively. González Ormerod described Canada and Mexico as well-positioned partners capable of resisting exploitation from larger powers through coordination rather than confrontation. The language used by Mexican lawmakers grew increasingly direct. Padierna Luna criticized Trump's territorial imagery as offensive and argued that sovereignty demanded a response similar to Carney's. Her emphasis remained on sovereignty within North America rather than separation from it. That distinction matters. The goal is not fragmentation, but balance. Trump's rhetoric, intentionally or not, clarified the stakes. Treating neighboring nations as subordinate territories accelerates their incentive to align with each other. Deputy Zavala Gutierrez articulated the leverage calculation with precision. Negotiating alone with the United States placed each country at a disadvantage. Presenting shared interests together altered the equation. Combined positions increased the probability of outcomes that benefited both sides. Unity transformed vulnerability into bargaining power. This strategic thinking extended beyond speeches. The sequence of diplomatic engagements revealed planning rather than improvisation. Carney's visit to Mexico City in September 2025 laid the groundwork. Governor General Simon's January visit reinforced it. A major Team Canada trade mission led by Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, scheduled for February 2026, signaled escalation in scope and seriousness. Each step built upon the previous one, moving from symbolism to substance. Scheinbaum's description of Simon as a very interesting woman and their discussions around Indigenous reconciliation underscored a deeper layer of alignment. Both countries share histories shaped by colonial legacies and ongoing efforts to reconcile with Indigenous communities. Addressing these issues together creates trust that extends beyond trade agreements. It forms the basis of a partnership grounded in values as well as interests. This pattern illustrates how shifts in power often occur, not through dramatic announcements or confrontational displays, but through consistent, coordinated decisions that gradually alter incentives.